I started talking. I thought I was already live. Um, just to let people come on. I'll try to get him on. He called me earlier. Um, and that would probably be a relief for everybody because but there's a gentleman that I've followed for a long time. He's gotten older just like I have. His name is Alistair McLeod. And he follows gold. He's from London. He's quite good. He's quite sharp. Anyway, he just put an article out on his website that he works for anyway, called Gold Money. And it talks, the headline is spot gold trades above 2,800. A Comex exchange for physical crisis is in progress. He would say progress, and he'd say Comex, a Comex. A Comex exchange for physical. They're having a hard time locating physical shares. All right, Logic was down, Finger was up, GTII was down a lot. The media story blames Trump's potential tariffs, but is this the real reason gold is hitting new highs? Gold and silver rose further this week, driven by continuing premiums on the Comex futures over London spot. In European trading this morning, spot gold was $2,794, up a further $24 from last Friday's close. And silver was $31.60, up $1.25. Guys and girls, silver is not going to be this cheap for very much longer. The gold/silver ratio fell from 91.7 this morning to 88.4. It takes 90 ounces of silver to be equivalent to 1 ounce of gold. That's not going to last longer either, in my opinion. While silver is still well below recent highs, it has outperformed gold since the new year. The premiums on the Comex futures are dragging the spot price higher and have generated a massive arbitrage, whereby gold futures are being sold through the exchange for physical facility. Bullion to settle is being air freighted to New York from London. Now, there's an interesting twist on that. So gold is moving from London to New York. Ignoring all of this complicated stuff, why could that be? Could it be that we don't have gold, or we have less gold than we state at Fort Knox? Do we want gold inside of the United States before Bretton Woods 3 starts? Maybe in Doha? Do we want to make sure that we have gold at the table, like China, like Russia, like Iran, like Germany, like Poland? Okay. The premiums on Comex futures are dragging the spot price higher and have generated a massive arbitrage, whereby gold futures are being sold through the exchange for physical facility. The exchange for physical facility. Bullion to settle is being air freighted to New York City from London. Since January 1st, Comex warehouse gold stocks have risen over 282 tons. And in addition, it is certain that there have been inflows into JP Morgan's and HSBC's private vaults in New York City. Naturally, these flows have drained the LBMA vaults of their liquidity, even forcing withdrawals from the Bank of England's Threadneedle Street vault, leading to a wait for delivery of up to 8 weeks, according to the Financial Times. The last time a dislocation of this sort occurred was during the COVID crisis, when gold rose from 1460 to 2073, which was then an all-time high, and was also a rise of 42%. So what is driving this new exchange-for-physical crisis? What is driving this new exchange for physical crisis? Are stories that Trump might bring in tariffs on gold and silver really credible? Let's deal with the tariff story first. Trump has never said he would implement tariffs on imported commodities, let alone precious metals. His tariff policies are protectionism aimed at protecting U.S. manufacturers from foreign competition and to encourage onshoring. Threats of high tariffs against Mexico and Canada, large exporters of silver and gold respectively, silver to Mexico, gold to Canada, are always in that context. If the tariff story has an involvement, it will have simply triggered an inherently unstable situation to destabilize. That was almost certainly going to happen at some point anyway. Increasingly, mine and scrap supplies are bypassing the Western markets, Comex and LBMA, because they suck and they're liars and they sell paper assets that don't exist. Anyway, increasingly mine and scrap supplies are bypassing Western markets and are going to central banks, sovereign wealth funds, and savings-driven Asians, which leaves Western bullion markets short of the metals. No kidding. The hot cowboys sell what doesn't exist. To understand the scale of the problem, one has to step back from current markets and put it into a longer-term context. Since the end of Bretton Woods in 1971, when the US president took the dollar off the gold standard, he said, "Nix on that." Since the end of the Bretton Woods system in 1971, the US Treasury embarked on a policy of anti-gold propaganda and price suppression to enable the dollar to be regarded as money instead of credit in gold's place. What you have to understand, to guys like Alistair and others, currency is just credit. It's an obligation. It's not really money. Money is gold. Money is silver. Maybe it's platinum. And if you want the honey, you have to have money. Since the end of Bretton Woods in 1971, the United States Treasury embarked on a policy of anti-gold propaganda and price suppression to enable the dollar to be regarded as money instead of credit in gold's place, because so few people actually understand the difference between money and credit. And that includes the entire macroeconomic establishment of highly qualified economists. The mighty US Treasury convinced everyone. So because people don't understand the difference of money and credit, the US Treasury was able to convince everyone that the dollar is money and pshaw, gold is nothing. It is a story which is now unraveling with dramatic consequences. It started with ex-communist states accumulating gold, China and Russia in particular, who were never exposed to Keynesian economics like I was. It's just crap. It's just crap. Have your children study history or literature. Don't study economics. Ugh. What a nightmare. So this unraveling has started with ex-communist states accumulating gold, who were never exposed to Keynesian economics, helping to drive prices up from under $300 an ounce in 2002, particularly when Chinese nationals were permitted to own gold from 2002 onward. More recently, Asian central banks in the Sino-Russian sphere of influence began to accumulate bullion, gold and silver, physical, for economic or geopolitical reasons. This has now spread to central banks in the Western sphere of influence, notably Poland's. How did I know that? How did I know he was going to bring up Poland? What we don't see is the extent to which associated sovereign wealth funds have and continue to accumulate bullion. But the figures are likely to be significant. So it should be have accumulated and continue to accumulate bullion. What it all amounts to is a growing global disillusionment with the United States Treasury's long-standing anti-gold propaganda and increasing concerns over mounting credit risks. And this was sped up, of course, by Samantha Powers, Victoria Nuland, Hillary Clinton, and Anthony Blinken, and others. All Biden, all Democrats. Well, I don't know if Victoria Nuland was a Democrat. I don't remember. Whether they fully realize it or not, these sophisticated buyers of gold are turning their back on credit, which includes currencies. The result is that in the last 25 years, currency values have progressively fallen, measured in real money. Real money being manna being money. Manna being money. I forgot what movie he said that in. So currency values have fallen measured in real money, which despite US Treasury propaganda remains legal money without counterparty risk in everyone's common law. In other words, gold and silver remain real money without counterparty risk. The log scale chart below shows the extent of divergence between the value of real money and fiat currencies over the last 25 years. It's down. My prediction, down. The yen has lost 93% of its year 2000 value. The dollar and euro, 90% of their year 2000 value. And sterling, the pound sterling, 92%. With users of these currencies, including savers, unaware what's happened to their medium of exchange. And now this collapse is accelerating, if it possibly can, with the average loss of over 25% in 2024 alone. We can talk about bulls and bears in financial markets forever, but to focus entirely upon the relationship between nose and grindstone blinds us to the true and massive, massive forces driving the relationship between money, gold and silver, and credit, currencies, condemning currencies toward oblivion. You can find Alistair MacLeod's thoughts on the website Gold Money. Let's go. Hey, Jimbo Whitefire. True with women also. Honey for money. If you've got the honey, I've got the money. Time. If you've got I've got the time. If you've got the time. I can't remember the words to that song. If you've got the, I'll be, if you are the salt on the tequila. If you've got the money, I've got the time. Something like that. When is SEC Chair Paul Atkins to go in front of Congress? Does it matter? I think he's a complete, what do you call it? Replacement for Gensler in every sense of the word. Just there to help the banks. But anyway, I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer when he's supposed to go in. Let's see if I can give you some stock prices quickly. I think Railtown closed at 33 cents. RLAIF. And I don't know, you guys might be getting tired of waiting, but I think that's going to go, quote unquote, go soon. 33 cents. A friend of mine I was talking to this morning, and he pointed out if rail went to $1, that would be a huge move. He remembers, as do I, when getting 20% return on your money in a short period of time was gangbusters. Now we're all seduced with this idea that we're going to make 10, 20, 30x on a single trade. That's both the sign of, possibly anyway, of a speculative market, but it's also that we've really focused on these squeeze stories. And I just wonder, had I, for example, just talking about myself, had I sold GTII when it was up, had I sold Finger when it was up, had I sold Vocal when it was up, just, you know, not at the peaks, just up, and then did it again, where I'd be right now. And I just throw that out there so that you can consider, as if these stocks go up, you don't have to hold out for the monster return. But in my opinion on Railtown, obviously it's a function of time and success getting customers, but I think you have a 10x awaiting you, 10 times your money waiting for you in Railtown. Could it be really quick? Sure. But it could take months, you know, it could take, I don't think it's going to take years. I don't think it's even going to take a year. Why? Because they are marketing their product. They are giving it a B2W effort. And if it's as good as the presentations say, they're going to get customers. So I don't think we're looking at a year. Could we be looking at 6 months, 9 months? Sure, we could be. But it used to be, before these criminals mastered the ability to sell stock that doesn't exist and own the regulatory agencies. It used to be that good news would be discounted to now very quickly. And so I think it's entirely possible that Railtown will get a big chunk of that 10x move quickly. All right, that's Railtown. Let's look at NextTrip, which is NTRP. Bit of a gamble. But here's the thing going on with NextTrip. It's, oh, I can't get a quote. NTRP. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. It's going to a tennis page. You show me yours, and I'll show you mine. $664 for NextTrip. The two negatives I see with NextTrip, one is their banker is benchmark, and two, they're going to need money. But 2 months ago, this was the story 2 months ago on NextTrip. NextTrip plans to acquire luxury travel company 5 Star Alliance. NextTrip, a leading travel technology company, announced today, that's 2 months ago, that it had signed a non-binding letter of intent to acquire 5 Star Alliance, an online luxury travel agency founded in 2004 and renowned for its curated collection of 5-star luxury hotels and resorts worldwide. They have proprietary search engine, collects the best rates at 5,000 hotels and resorts. They have established relationship of suppliers and industry leaders. They have a luxury cruise program. They have a group travel pipeline and a 20-year reputation. 5 Star Alliance specializes in helping travelers discover and book the world's top luxury hotels offering personalized recommendations, competitive rates, and is known for world-class customer service. It's kind of a concierge service. With a proprietary search engine which secures the best rates for thousands of five-star hotels globally. The company also handles group travel bookings and high-end cruises. With an industry-leading customer satisfaction score of 4.9 stars, far surpassing the industry average. Five Star Alliance has built a stellar reputation as one of the largest collection of luxury hotel and cruise offerings in the world under one brand. Five Star provides NextTrip a valued asset with established relationships, media influence, and press coverage. And the story goes on and on for them. Anyway, that was 2 months ago. I have a feeling 2 months is plenty of time to get a deal done. So that's NextTrip, NTRP. It's got a low market cap. If this deal gets done, could the stock double or triple? Sure. But remember, just remember, there may be a short position in the stock, so it may run. But also remember, though, they're going to need to raise money. So see it as a, my opinion, see it first time that you're in it and out of it as a trade. You can then make other decisions later. Let's see how Finger was up today. And Finger looked good yesterday. Finger closed at 132, up 2 cents. The volume was 163,000. And it looks good. Finger looks good. It's finger licking good. What else? Oh, NIXX, Nixie. I don't know what to say there. The stock is certainly cheap. So it has that going for it. I don't know. I think Nixie's worth a re-entry for a trade. Similar, you know, to go from 222 maybe back to that $8, $10, $12 range, which it traded up on 52 million shares. I think something like that could happen again. I think it'd be a hit and run as well. I do think it should be a hit and run. And then I don't know what other stocks to emphasize with you. I guess that'll do. That'll do for now. Let me see what you're saying. PS71, I sent you an email. Can you please look at it later? Yes, I will look at it later. If Ham is correct, then I'll apologize, but I think Williams' $1.50 price target is more realistic. Yeah, partly, Bill, the reason I have a lower target is I think there'll be a lot of stock for sale from the offering at $1.50, $1.55, $1.60. I think that's where Roth Capital will support the deal. Now, I do caution, Bill, because you left out part of what I'm projecting. If the stock does show high volume, if Finger Motion shows high volume, and it breaks through $1.55, $1.60 with some volume, I think it can go to 210. I do think it can get up to the $2 range, $1.80, $2.25 range. But I think it'll have a hard time going past that for the similar reason. I think it'll run into sellers. this is all healthy. It's all good. The expression is shares are moving from weak hands to strong hands. It's all a very normal building process for a better move later, hopefully. But I think you need to see, I'm really looking forward to reading the Roth Capital research report. I have the benchmark research report. I guess I put it in a storage box. It's, it's a very repetitive, very simplistic report, which I've read to you many times, with a target, I think, of $5. But I don't think the benchmark report is written in seriousness for institutions. I think benchmark is in the business of introducing CEOs to Jeff Smith at Lynn Partners. And basically, I think benchmark gets a kickback for leading companies into toxic convertible note financing. That's what I think. So I don't think the research report from Benchmark was anything more than checking a box. Hey, we're pretending to be a real investment bank and we're providing research. Benchmark exists to slaughter companies. And there's example after example after example where Benchmark has introduced companies to Jeff Smith over at the Lynn Partners. What are Ham's numbers? Ham thinks the report from Roth will come out with a target of $8 a share or better. And he may be right. He may be right. What Ham is hearing is that the Roth Capital analyst and the Roth Capital Brain Trust are really keenly interested in this C2 contract. And Ham may be right. I don't have anybody to speak with at Roth Capital in this area. I'm covered in the oil and gas arm of Roth Capital, but not in Chinese stocks. I don't have anybody to talk to. I can't wait for Finger to be $8 or $10. Ham's numbers are crazy. Well, they're crazy until they happen, I don't want to say he's wrong. It doesn't feel that way yet for me. And a lot of it is feel on my part, what is that? I don't know. We all had a chance to sell Finger at $8, $9. And I thought, the reason I didn't is I thought it was going to go much, much higher. It doesn't feel that way now, but it could. Hey, John Doe. So if you have no faith in the SEC chair, how does Ham have faith in Trump doing anything? Well, you'd have to ask Ham whether he really has faith in Trump doing anything about short selling. I think Trump has a pretty active agenda. And I have to say for myself, without getting into any of the particulars, I'm enormously disappointed that he wants to turn Gaza Strip into a condo development for his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. But I've talked to people today who think it's a brilliant idea. But I think that issue, as you may or may not know, Netanyahu's health is really bad. Netanyahu is Other than this war, Netanyahu would probably be in prison for other crimes. So I think Trump is throwing his support behind Netanyahu in order to imagine or even reimagine peace in the Middle East. And that maybe is bigger on Trump's agenda than an intractable problem of short sellers. I don't know. Do the short sellers come out of those parts of the world where there is war, threat of war, and terrorism? Who knows? I don't know. But the other area Trump seems to be really heavily focused on is getting a meeting with Putin to end the Ukrainian war. If you've been a long-time listener of my drivel, I read to you both from speeches and from a book by Professor Steve Cohen, the husband of Vanda Heuvel, the editor of The Nation. What is Vanda Heuvel's first name? Christina Vanda Heuvel's husband. He's since died. And Cohen was stating, and has stated for a decade, 15 years, that we're the closest we've ever been on the doomsday clock to complete nuclear annihilation. Well, that's now, if possible, it's even closer. And I think Trump wants to avoid a nuclear head-to-head with Russia. And certainly he wants to end the war in the Ukraine. I think I'm reading that Trump wants to pull our troops out of Syria. Golan Heights, there's oil there, which I guess now the Golan Heights are claimed and belong to Israel from a translation of historical biblical lineage, I guess. So anyway, maybe we'll be supporting Israel there, but apparently we're going to be taking our troops out of Syria. I think he wants to downsize our effort. I mean, he's put the challenge out there. Why do you think he said to NATO, you have to increase your participation to 5%? Why didn't he say 2% or 3%, 5%? I think he wants to withdraw from NATO. I think Trump, very much like that game of Risk, takes a look at the globe and he sees a world which is dominated maybe in Asia and Southeast Asia by Beijing. You know, you could stretch it and say India somehow, but I think he sees China as the Asian Pacific sphere, and then over and up, I guess, still Asia, Eurasia, the Slavophile problem. He sees Moskva as the Arctic and all the resources there. And I think he looks at the Arctic Circle and the potential trade up there and the oil reserves and other reserves. And he sees Russia as a second focus of world power. And I think the reason Trump is looking at North America, much like if you ever played Risk, you want to have to defend yourself at Alaska and at Greenland. You don't want to have, and maybe down at Guatemala, but you don't want to have to defend every area of North America. And I think Trump is trying to proactively take a powerful stance on North America as a counterbalance to these other spheres of influence. I think that agenda is far ahead of short selling on Donald Trump's list. He is doing tariffs, but I think that's part of that geopolitical power game. He does want to bring manufacturing back to the United States because that's the only way we can justify our debt and the ongoing utility of the US dollar. We'll see if he can do that. He's fighting to get criminals from, I guess they're just coincidentally from Venezuela. It's just they're criminals. It's not that the pattern is that criminal gang, Trendagoya or something, is all from Venezuela. That's just a coincidence. They just happen to be a bunch of criminals who have certain characteristics. But it looks like Venezuela is one place, El Salvador is another, and the cartels out of Mexico. Trump's going after that. He's going after fentanyl, which seems to come into our country, triggered maybe by China. And there's other social issues Trump's going after, whether you agree with him or not, he's doing. I think he's trying to shake up the deep state, the sewer. He's clearly going after the CIA. He's going after USAID, run by Samantha Power. He's going after the top level FBI people. So I think Trump has quite a bit on his agenda that comes ahead of short selling. I would love Senator Crapo to ask one question. When will MMTLP be settled? Well, Big Vic, as you know, I'm a broken record on that. You can settle MMTLP for yourself. Cost you $80, probably 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks of time. You can transfer your MMTLP. It might be called MMTLP at your brokerage firm. It might be called NextBridge at your brokerage firm. Either way, it's just a placeholder that has no value at all. You can resolve and settle your own MMTLP situation by moving your shares to the transfer agent. That's all Wall Street owes you. Beyond that is not settlement. Beyond that are lawsuits for fraud, lawsuits for criminal activity, lawsuits for tortious interference in business plans of Torchlight, of MMAT, and frankly, tortious interference of business plans and efforts at NextBridge today. Those aren't settlements. Those are lawsuits going on, as I understand it, even now in the legal system. There's an effort in the regulatory and / congressional side by all of us to force some sort of investigation. But that's not settlement. That's an investigation, get a result. If you want to settle MMTLP, all Wall Street owes you, all Wall Street owes you and me is 1 share of NextBridge for 1 share of MMTLP. You can effect that settlement all by your lonesome. Call your broker, transfer it to Esquinity or whatever it is, and send a fee for $80. And then you have NextBridge. The rest of it is lawsuits ferreting out criminal activity and fraudulent activity on the part of FINRA and on the part of offshore criminals it could be, my understanding, it's Frankfurt, but it could be anywhere in the world. It could be anywhere in the world. And there's a push for an investigation as to why trading was halted. As you know, FINRA says you couldn't have traded anyway because it was T+2. I think that's very weak beer, because one can trade on shortened settlement, but shortened settlement is not by matter of course. Shortened settlement is something you have to know about, you have to ask about, and I expect, Big Vic, that Congress is going to stay away from MMTLP, and the court systems are going to take a decade to resolve it. That's my opinion. But you can make money in NextBridge in the meantime. I think you're very fortunate to have Greg McCabe running that company with his team. And that's not to say Wes Christian isn't going to find something out. But Wes Christian wants to become Peter Angelos. He wants to settle. They sign off, and he becomes a billionaire. Wall Street's a lot like dating a beautiful woman. All those men around her, they're backup plans. They're not just friends, and they're all looking to cut you out as quickly as possible. There are no friends. There's no friends on Wall Street. Nobody's a friend. We need a national sales tax and tariffs. Yeah, I think these tariffs are in effect a sales tax, aren't they? And it's a way of paying down our debt. We've been very blessed for, I don't know, probably since World War II, with ever increasing trade amongst partners, basically protected by the United States Navy. That's all falling apart now. And don't blame Trump. Don't blame Trump. I mean, he's gonna bring it to a conclusion quickly, but I don't really know who to blame. But I think China plays the long game. And I think they corrupted the Clintons, they corrupted the Bushes, they definitely corrupted the Bidens. And they learned everything they could from our universities and from our trade secrets. They may even be benefiting from the destruction of companies like MMAT. They get the technology. And while we've been distracted by slogans and idiocy, they focused on building their industrial might. They're not universally well liked around the world. I don't know that we are right now either, but there's enough residual affinity for Americans that most countries, most people would rather do business with us still, except under these women and the simp Blinken, we've really pissed off people about the whether or not you can trust the word of the United States and the word of the representation of credit for our currency and our debt markets. I mean, we stole Russia's reserves to apparently give it to the Democratic Party. There's no record of the billions of dollars in aid that we gave to the Ukraine. Where did it go? We need to use more terrorists and less taxation of the people. Well, it's a movement of the peoples. Tariffs are a consumption tax. It's just a fact. It's a value-added tax. It's done at the federal level rather than at the state level, but it is a consumption tax. I mean, if you have to pay more for Canadian lumber, you're paying it. If you have to pay more for cars manufactured in Canada, you're paying it. If you have to pay more for Canadian maple syrup, you're paying it. The proceeds go to the U.S. federal government. And I think it's a consumption tax. And I think Donald Trump wants to get rid of the income tax because the last time wealth was created, other than with the Bill Gateses and the guy that married the most available or is going to marry the most available woman in the world, Bezos, and Sandberg and her boss, I forget his name, always Zuckerberg. These guys made tremendous wealth, and then the hedge fund wealth of BlackRock and SAC and etc. These are stupendous wealth vehicles, but all of them grew their wealth with tax advantages. They all did. Hedge funds can trade short-term trades. And I think 60%, it's either 40 or 60%, I think it's 60% of their trades are taxed as long-term rather than short-term. They can pay out their profits to themselves as a share, a profits interest. So they pay taxes on a long-term capital gains basis rather than an income tax basis. And I think what Trump is trying to do for the whole country, if he can get it through, is return us to a time that as you grow in your career, as your income grows, as your assets grow, as your businesses grow, you can reinvest money without having constantly to pay the IRS. Well, we still have to cover our basic costs, and I think that's tariffs. I think he sees it. He's not using that word, but he's going to move us to a consumption tax instead of a income tax. That's what I think Trump is doing. Was it Abe Lincoln who created the IRS? He didn't call it that, I don't believe. I think I don't know the answer, but I think when Abe Lincoln taxed people to pay for the war, that's where the term greenback came from. There were currencies, unless my memory of history is wrong, there were a lot of state and bank currencies in place, but there was a distrust of whether or not government specie would be honored. So I believe he created a taxing system, but I thought it had a short life, that it faded away, because then you had the robber baron era, and robber barons didn't pay tax. You know, the Goulds and the Carnegies and the Morgans, they made their wealth without tax. I think the Federal Reserve and the income tax may have come into play at about the same time. That's a good question, Corinne, and I'll study it. I'll study it. You can see that I don't know what I'm talking about. Commodity tariffs are counterproductive. Finished good tariffs are okay. Yeah, that's bravo. That's the protectionism of it. Yeah, that makes sense. Hey, Paulie. Hey, Rondell. Hey, Narad. Gold is going to go higher because hedge funds are starting to run scared of Trump, and they're going to try to hedge their bets. That's one way of looking at it. Hedge funds are all imitators. I think the biggest reason oil and gas, gold, silver, platinum, miners are all going to go up is it's a new year. The NVIDIA trade has run its course, but they are all lemmings. They're scared to be out in front of each other. And so they had to wait till the year ended last year. I think the biggest reason they're all going to move is because it's the new story, it's the new buzz. My opinion, and I'm really worried about it. I want to own some silver. I want to own some gold. But I'm really concerned it could happen overnight. I don't think it's going to show up as much in the gold market because gold primarily is an asset that exists above ground. In general, for the history we know about, all the gold ever mined is sitting in vaults. I mean, there's some of it in jewelry. There's a tiny, tiny bit that gets applied to industry, tiny. But mostly it sits there as, I don't know what, big blocks of bologna in the basement at the bank on Threadneedle Street, the Bank of England, or underneath the vaults of the Federal Reserve in New York or elsewhere. But it's there. Silver is different. Silver, there used to be a huge amount of silver above ground. I believe, and I'd have to reread all the stuff I read before, but I believe the reason there were huge stockpiles of silver in the United States, it was left over from the William Jennings Bryan era. There were a lot of Western senators who pushed the government to buy silver because the mines were so prolific out west. The donors to the parties, to the government, were silver miners. So I think there was a lot of purchase under agreements there that helped enrich people that had access to the government. But I also think one of the things that happened is for war, the nation stockpiled silver and other materials, and any program gets started for a temporary situation, it can extend beyond its usefulness. Anyway, I think that was one of the reasons there were huge stockpiles of silver in the United States. Well, that over time, those are gone. So there isn't a supply of silver above ground anywhere other than in your kitchen forks and knives, or in the jewelry in India or elsewhere. There's that kind of silver. But there's no, with the gold market right now, apparently delivery is being delayed 8 weeks from London. 8 weeks. Why? Well, they can rearrange their hypothecation and their rehypothecation and their lending, and they can make phone calls. The gold is there. It's quickly moving to Asia. So it's coming out of the physical vaults in the West as we ridicule it under the idea of Keynes. But it's still there. Silver isn't there. Silver is not there. It's consumed in our military. It's consumed in our medical industry. It's consumed in computers and phones. It's consumed in solar. It's consumed in batteries. It's consumed. And it's gone. And we don't mine for silver per se. Silver is a side product of other metals. Yes, Mexico produces silver, Peru produces silver, but much of that mining stopped with the low prices. So what I think is going to happen with silver, and I think it's going to happen in London, they're not going to be able to deliver silver at some point. There will be that somebody who owns the futures will stand for delivery of silver, and there won't be any physical. And silver is heavy. Silver is heavy, heavy, heavy. You're not going to be able, I don't know, maybe those big C whatever jets that the Air Force has, it's going to be hard to move silver in enough quantity by jet. Silver is heavy, boy, it's heavy. Gold is heavy too, but gold is concentrated, as we know. We just read. It's 90 to 1. 1 ounce of gold is worth 90 ounces of silver. And silver is heavy, boy. So if you want to move the same amount of monetary value of gold as it's 1/90th, stated it the other way, you've got to fill your plane with 90 times more weight. It's probably even more than that, because I think silver weighs more than gold. I don't know. But you got to have 90 ounces of silver for every 1 ounce of gold. So my point is, if the numbers get large enough, they're not going to be able to settle physically. Well, what you're going to say, well, they'll start mining. Yeah, but mining in that kind of volume it literally can take years. But if you go to established mines, it can take 6 months or more. I think what's going to break the back of the precious metals markets, which means all of a sudden silver will be trading over $100 and gold will be over 5,000 on the way to much higher numbers, is I think silver is going to, somebody's going to ask for settlement in silver physically in London, and they're not going to be able to deliver. And then it'll be a panic. It'll be a buyer's panic. That's my opinion. I don't think it'll happen in New York or Chicago, because the Comex has a clause where they can give you cash instead of your silver. So if you own the futures and you stand for delivery, as they call it, and there's no silver, they can give you cash. I don't think that's true in London. The GTII call with the merger candidate. Go ahead, guys. Go listen to GTII. Please, go. That's not a serious investment at this point. It could be later. If they merge, if it comes out of receivership, and if they come to you for a financing, then it becomes a serious investment opportunity. But simply as a merger, I mean, I could be wrong. But I would be surprised if they're going to leave you with a lot of the company. Me too. I own GTII. I think we're going to be crammed down. But go listen to it, guys. Middle Ground wants you to listen to it. Please go listen to the GTII call. I'm going to keep going here just because I got a late start. And, even if there's two people talking to me, I'd like to finish that up. Hey, KYP, someday I'll come to New York or New Jersey and meet you. You don't want my option on GTII. No, I don't want your option on GTII. I assume you mean opinion. I do want your opinion on GTII. The Trump-Gaza talk is a bluff, Giuseppe. I think what he's doing, I think Trump has some bad news for Netanyahu. I think Trump's going to tell Netanyahu, we are not going to attack Iran. And I think it's bad news that we're going to move our troops out of Syria as far as Netanyahu is concerned. And we are sending 2,000-pound bombs to Israel. And of course, that's not an act of terrorism to drop a 2,000-pound bomb on civilians because, as we all know, the children grow up to be terrorists, and there might be, there's a bunch of civilians who cluster around terrorists. I mean, that's what we're told. Anyway, I think you're onto something. I think Trump might be giving Netanyahu something to cling to. But I don't know how the United States can buy Gaza Strip. I don't know how we can send troops to Gaza Strip. Maybe we leave Germany and go to Gaza. I don't know. But if it happens, Trump's son-in-law will become a very wealthy man. Very wealthy man. Devalio, I don't know if you invested in it. A lot of people did invest in that gold company. I'm an investor in it. The company is in the simplest of terms, it's a nano gold company, just like Gold Strike, just like the Carlin Trend in Nevada. A company called Newmont Mining went from being a penny stock to becoming one of the top 2 or 3 gold companies in the world on the basis of a nano gold, an invisible gold mining project in Nevada called the Carlin Trend. Carlin Trend. The one of the senior guys, and to my memory, it's Dr. Bill Gill, who came up with the idea of how to get gold out of the Carlin Trend. Literally invisible gold. You can't see it with the eye, but you can see it with a microscope. You can see it I mean, there's methodologies to get the gold out. In the case of Gold Strike, in the case of Newmont, the way to do it was to use large autoclaves, which are pressure cookers. And these autoclaves are the size of a submarine. So they would put the sand under pressure, heat, and they'd melt the gold out. And that's, to this day, what they do. I'm sure it's more complicated than just how I described it, but I've gone and visited and seen how these things get done. And you start with the material. Every process is slightly different, but you have steps of how to convert a rock or a sand into a molten flow. And that molten flow contains gold, silver, etc. Anyway, the Carlin Trend is not finished. It still exists. It still is the reason Nevada, I believe, remains the largest gold producing state in the United States. I mean, maybe Alaska's up there. You'll have to ask her. But what this company has is the same kind of material. It's located in a caldera, an old ancient volcano. So the sand, it's sand. The sand has come down off these ancient mountains and accumulated in the deserts of Nevada. So the sun has been the concentrator and water has been the concentrator. Now the resource is deep, is seawater, it's brine, and then there's clay, and then there's this layers of sand. The company bought its leases $15 years ago, maybe longer. I invested a lot of money at much higher prices on the first wave of enthusiasm that the original investors had of a process to get the gold out of this resource. So what they did with the money they raised something like $75 million. And they built a plant, and they got the equipment, and they were all set up to go. Now, what I'm not a scientist or a metallurgist, so I'm just using my own language. What they did with it was use, I've got to be careful. I think what they called it was chemistry. back then, you know, valences and all that kind of stuff you remember from your high school chemistry. So the process was one where they used the laws of attraction and dissolving, I guess, to get the gold out. Well, what happened it took a few years to develop the process, but what happened was the process worked in the labs all day long. All day long the process worked in the labs. But once they put it into a pilot plant with the machinery and the equipment affixed to the ground, as one must be on this planet, when you stand, you're standing on the ground. So when they scaled it up, the positive, I'm going to get it backwards, but I'll just go with my memory. The positive charge of the Earth overwhelmed the negative charges and the positive charges, but the negative charges in the process. So they were unable to scale this process because the Earth's positive charge, unless it's negative, overwhelmed the laws of attraction they were using with this chemistry. So they could get gold into solution, but then it would go back into its original form somehow. And my vocabulary and my understanding escapes me. So anyway, the guy doing it and the team went back to work, and they approached it, as he says, from the standpoint of physics. And I have an understanding of what goes on, but I'm not going to describe it out publicly. But he changed the process, and he put up his own money to do it. He spent the last 4 years, there was COVID, and then there was an earthquake up there. So that gave him time. He bought all this Batmobile equipment, and he can study it with a super powerful microscope and all that. But he came up with a technology, 2 of them, which does get the gold. And it does not involve attraction. It doesn't involve it. I'm not going to say it. It's pretty simple. So that's why I'm not going to say it. But who thought of freeze-dried coffee? Now it's simple, but who was the first person to think of it? So anyway, there's a process now. So this resource, 10 years ago, decade ago, by third party, was measured at 175 million tons of resource. Using a standard assay method, caustic fusion, they were able to get almost 0.04, just slightly under that, 0.04 ounces of gold per ton. Well, they have 180 million tons. It works out to about 6.6 million tons of gold, that methodology. The Carlin Trend, which is under production today, their recovery there, using this sledgehammer of these large autoclaves, is 0.03. Roughly 0.03. So this is 25% better than that. So a natural buyer, just using the autoclave method, would be, I mean, and they'd have to tailor it to the material, but would be Barrick Gold and Newmont Mining. But the methodology that this scientist, this gentleman, came up with actually recovers the gold at greater than 0.20, as high as 0.25, but 0.20. So the excitement at this little company and the excitement, the push behind raising money was to build a pilot plant, which would all in cost about $5 million. I mean, it's a matter of paying some of the development costs back, rehabbing the existing plant, which was affected by the earthquake, expanding the existing plant to, I think the goal is to produce 36,000 tons a day. So as it's expressed, it's real simple. Weigh the gold, just produce the gold day in and day out. Well, the cost is about $5 million, a little bit more. We needed money for the leases, the permits, the overhead, the ongoing operations. So all in, the number was around $5.5 million. And it's very exciting. The testing is completely finished. They've done hundreds of the tests, and they get, using two different processes, they get this 0.20 ounces of gold per ton. Well, if you use 0.20 ounces of gold per ton times 175 million tons, you're talking 30 million ounces of gold. 30 million ounces of gold. That would be the largest discovery of gold in North America in decades. Now, the interesting thing, because of the earthquake, is that there was vibration in the structure such that they were able to determine that this sand goes down maybe 600, 800 feet, and then there's the brine and the clay down there. It's like a big bowl of jelly on a geologic level. So the third party a decade ago drilled, I forget how many sonic drill holes, I think it was 32 or 36 of them, in the north zone and in the southern zone, but they only drilled down 200 feet. Two of the wells, they drilled down 400 feet. But on the 200 feet, everything was the same throughout. I mean, it's a little lumpy, but basically the same sand resource throughout. So the 180 million tons comes from the north zone and the south zone down 200 feet. Two of the wells of the sonic drill holes went down to 400 feet. They found the same thing. So one of the uses of proceeds is going to be to drill down to 400 feet. Believe it or not, they're going to drill down to 600 feet and maybe down to 800 feet. But let's just stick with the 400 feet that there's a high degree of confidence on. That would double the amount of resource. So you would go from 30 million ounces of gold recoverable to potentially 60 million ounces of gold recoverable. 60 million ounces. Now, the other use of proceeds, they had the north zone and the south zone, but there's a big zone in between. they're going to drill in between. And then there's zones to the west and to the east. If they drill all of that, the resource could be 1 billion to 1.5 billion tons. And then you're talking about a number that is so spectacular, it's breathtaking. You could have 200 million ounces of gold. 200 million ounces of gold. And it's an on-off switch. All they have to do is build the pilot plant, which they're working on now, refurbishing and expanding, produce the gold, and the goal is 36 tons a day for weeks, days, months. Do it over and over and over and over and over again. And then you take the recovery and you multiply it by the amount of tons as a resource, and you get your recoverable gold. Now, we raised about I can't remember. We didn't raise somewhere between $300,000 and $500,000. I think we didn't get close to $500,000. And we still needed to raise the $5 million. Now, I and a friend of mine went to work on raising money for the company in the larger amount of money. And I successfully located a source of that capital. That raise has been pending now since my memory is since the end of September. So that's October, November, December, January, 4 months. And it hasn't come in yet. So the company went out and they raised $1 million from a group of investors who have been long-term investors in the company. And they had their own geophysicists, geologists, study everything very closely over the last, 9 months. So they put up $1 million to keep the project going and to order the material, to tear down the damaged part of the plant, to pay the overhead, and to basically move forward. Where the company is right now is we're still waiting for the $5 million to come in. I expect that to happen anytime, but I can't, DeVilio, I've expected it to come in any day for the last 2 or 3 months. And so whilst I'm confident that the monies could come in tomorrow, I really hesitate to say that it could be another month. It could be another 2. I don't know. It's all in a netherworld of regulatory approval. When it comes, when the $5 million comes, I think because the company has already done so much, I think the timeline for the pilot plant will be less than 90 days to get it into production. I could be wrong. It could take, everything always seems to take longer. So let's assume the money came in next week, which might be dreaming. But if it came in next week, I would think that the pilot plant would be completed and producing by the end of March at the soonest, maybe by the end of April, something like that. Then, under conservative assumptions, you probably want to produce the material for months, certainly weeks. So you're probably looking, under a conservative estimate, 6 more months before you get the final reports of how the material can do. I think that once the pilot plant is up and running, as soon, one day even, if the pilot plant does achieve 0.20 gold in hand, I think the news will spread like wildfire. And then it'll take on a life of its own. Let's assume Barrick Gold and Newmont Mining are the buyers. We don't know that. But they'll send their own teams in to see how the process works. And then it'll take on a life of its own. My opinion, DeVilio, is as the project stands today, without the pilot plant in operation, with gold prices where they are, you might be able to sell the project for 40 cents a share. You might. I mean, I'm making some assumptions, but just to get to the point, to these guys. I think if the testing, the pilot plant works, and it's the early stages, you might be able to sell the company for $4. I think if the pilot plant is in operation for 6 months and the drilling goes down to 400 feet and maybe 600 feet, and it drills in between and outwards, you can almost pick a number. You could go to huge numbers per share, but let's just pick one. $40 a share it could be sold for. The investment, and I don't remember if you invested, was 4 cents a share, 4 cents a share. So I've been silent on the deal because the money hasn't come in. There's nothing to talk about. 2, we're still technically in a fundraising phase, which means a quiet period. And I can't control that. There's nobody for me to call to say, hey, approve the money, release the hounds. There's nobody. All I'm stuck with is waiting like anybody else. But I think we're getting very close to the point that the funding will be in. And the delay is my responsibility, not the company. It's my fault, not the company's fault. And once it's in, I think things are going to accelerate. And this investment is going to have all the upside of a squeeze play without any short selling, without any criminal activity, without the need to go to Jeff Smith at Lind Partners to raise money, without the need to go to Benchmark. And it's an on-off switch. It is an on-off switch. 4 cents turns into 40 cents, that's 10x. 4 cents turns into $4, that's 100x. 4 cents turns into $40, that's 1,000x. All of that, whilst speculative, because frankly, you can still have a failure here, so there is risk to the money. But all of those targets are totally achievable once the pilot plant gets going. Guess what? The pilot plant is not in operation. Why? Because I've been unsuccessful in delivering the 5 million that I promised. It's my fault. But I think we're coming to an end of that. And I think it's one of the most exciting investments I've ever seen in my lifetime. By the way, DeVilio, I negotiated one warrant, one 5-year warrant at 4 cents for every 1 share. So when you put up your money, you got your shares at 4 cents, but you also got the right to buy another share at 4 cents. So it's kind of 2 for 1. And so in other words, if the stock were to go to, let's say, $4, it's kind of like it went to $8. I mean, yes, you have to put up new money, but it's such a tiny bit of money. So that's where it is. And it's still there. It's still square. And it's still waiting on funding, which I expect to happen any day now. And that's now I think the 3rd time I've given that story in the last 2 or 3 weeks, 4 weeks. The reason I'm doing it is because so much time has gone by, and I think people are frustrated. One of the gentlemen on here, I think his name is Doug, accused me of stealing the money. I want to be clear. What I did was introduce you, if you were an investor, directly to the company, and you wired the money directly to the company. I never received any cash or any, and I never handled the cash. It's immature on that guy's part, if I can't remember if his name was Doug. I think it's immature to immediately accuse somebody of stealing his money. He shouldn't invest in anything because he's a baby, he's a child. But on the other hand, I think it's fair that people are asking, what the hell's going on? Why is it taking so long? We were expecting results maybe by the end of the year. And DeVilio, bottom line, it's my fault. I promised the company that I would bring in the $5 million, and I have failed to do so. I am confident that the money will come very soon, but it's like predicting, I don't know what's a good example. It's like predicting when a hurricane is going to hit New Orleans. You know it's going to happen again, but when is it? I don't know. I think the company will be fully funded I'm hopeful by next week, but I would have told you that at Thanksgiving. So could it go on for weeks and months? Sure, I guess it could. So that's the risk right now. The risk is the funding is going to take longer than I expect. So that's the answer. Why isn't this working? There it goes. There it goes. Yeah, there it goes.
Your call has been forwarded to
Call ended.
All right, I just tried I just tried Ham. He called me twice while I was answering your question, Devilio. Hey, technology. Hey, Pete the Greek. Come on, William Wall. Come on, man. Wall Street owes us more. U3 halts, blue sheets, etc. Come on, man. Yeah, I think so, but that's going to be a legal path, and I guess you just haven't experienced enough of the legal process to know that the rewards when you go down a legal path are not financial rewards. They're performance, like providing the blue sheets, providing one share of NextBridge for one share of MMTLP. That's all Wall Street technically owes you. 2 days of trading. I think they owe you that 2 days of trading, particularly since FINRA was protecting their own asses. I think there was a huge conflict of interest. However, the rule that Jessica Hopper used to halt trading, it's a valid rule on the books. So it'll go to court. I happen to agree with you, Pete, that they owed us that trading. And in fact, there's reports that the stock traded that Friday morning as high as, I scarce believe it, but as high as 24,000 a share. The number that I have more confidence in is it traded for $2,400 a share. So yeah, I think there's damages there. They should have let it trade. But it comes into this netherworld of high-priced attorneys on the criminal side going up against our attorneys who are being paid by whom? Not you, not me. So they're probably going to do it as a class action. That means they're fronting their hard costs. And just, you've seen the movies. You remember that movie with John Travolta about the the leather lawsuit up in New England. Eventually, the law firm has to settle. So you can think that I'm wrong, but I stick by my guns. The legal process is about a settlement for the attorneys, and we'll end up with, if we're lucky, dollars per share. Now, the other process is going through Congress. And Pete the Greek, how has that gone? I've walked the halls of Congress. I've gone into offices. I've sat with representatives. I've stood outside of the SEC. How's it gone? I agree. It can go well. But it's been 3 years. So I told you 8, that's 3 of them. Let's see if I'm right. Could be 5 more. But they don't per se owe us the blue sheets because they don't share that information. Should they share it? Absolutely. Should it be transparent? Absolutely. Should the markets be fair? Absolutely. But what's likely is any rules that are changed or enforced will be from now onward, not backward. But you might disagree with me. Has the SEC, has FINRA, has Ann Wagner, has the guy with the bow tie, has Pete Sessions, has anyone other than maybe Mike Crapo shown any indication that Congress is going to force $1 trillion or $100 billion settlement? I don't see it. Where it may come up, Pete the Greek, and this is where I think there's people working on it, is that FINRA committed fraud, I believe. And Fidelity apparently committed fraud. And probably others did as well. Well, those lawsuits could get huge settlements. Huge. Do you think it'll be quickly? Okay, you disagree. You and I have a difference of opinion. Do you think we will get, as shareholders, will get the majority of this settlement? Okay, you and I have a disagreement. If the guy from Texas is able to, if the guy from Texas, the attorney, is able to win, it could be $100 billion. He and his team will take half of it, so it'll be $50 billion. That's a lot, though. Some of it will go to the company, some of it will go to other parties, and the rest will come to us. My guess is the tobacco lawsuits, the asbestos lawsuits, all took a decade or more, and I think that's what will happen here. The bad guys will hire Gibson Dunn and Mobius, Dobius and Dubious, and so will we. So will we. So I think the legal route will take a long time, and it may or may not end up with a glorious settlement, but it'll end in a settlement which will be driven by the attorneys needing. They'll need to. They just will run out of time and money. In terms of Congress, we have our theory, but the lobbyists for the criminals, and make no mistake, they are criminal and they broke the law, but the lobbyists, they got through to Ann Wagner. Ann Wagner says the consolidated audited trail is an invasion of your privacy, because she's just reading from SAC's lobbyists' memo that they put in front of her, or Goldman Sachs's memo. Remember, Pat with the red hair, he said Goldman Sachs is a stock loan department with the name of an investment bank over the door. They make 86% of their revenue from stock loan, which is this criminal activity, the F3 button, and 75% is their profit. I hope you're right. I hope you're right, Pete. I hope I'm wrong. Thank you, David Hensley. That's awfully nice of you. I would buy Lucky a bone or something, but maybe I'll just buy him a candle. I didn't see a live GTII. Middle Ground said there was one, so you know. Barbara's the best. Barbara's the best. David, I appreciate that. I do appreciate it. I appreciate the moral, whatever, the encouragement most of all. It's not easy being cheesy. The live on GTII is over. It started at 2:45 and definitely was worth listening to. Well, I didn't come on until 4 o'clock, so that must have been a long call. Yeah, Ham called in. I called him back. E&M, I was answering DeVillio's question. Let me try Ham again. He didn't answer, but he called me twice, and I didn't pick up. So it's really my fault, like everything.
Your call has been forwarded.
Call ended.
So I don't know when he'll come on, E&M. He may call back. Where do we access the rewarding? Is it on not legal advice? Don't know. The receiver might. I don't know that the receiver has a website, but there may be a link. I never got an email from the receiver, but many people did. So maybe he'll email out a link to the replay. Hey, Donna, listen to the AI Versity and the GTII receiver. Sounded good. No reverse split for a year. Well, that's good. No reverse split is good. Donna, that's fantastic for a year. So the bad guys just have to hedge their position for a year. But that's better than nothing. That's much better than nothing. Because, the stock price could go up and then they don't have to do a reverse split. What was the ratio of ownership of the company after the reverse merger? How much do we get of the new co? So Donna, the One, and Barbara are all encouraged by, I think Barbara said so. No. It's just Donna and the One are encouraged by the AI Versity call with the receiver. So I don't know where to find it. I'm open to good news. I am open to it. Robert asks you, Donna, do you know where we can access a recording of the GTII presentation, which started 2 hours? No, an hour and a half before my call started. Hey, John Platinum. Robert, it was a stream. I don't think it was recorded. But AI Versity said he'd go on not legal. J.R. Ewing was there, and I think he liked what he heard. That's great. So maybe Richard Hoffman will have an interview. I'm glad to interview the guy too, but I think J.R. and Richard will do a better job than I can. So now what? Hey, do we need any more money? Or are they accepting more money? They are. I assume you're talking about the gold company. If you email me, I've got about 4 people that want to put more money in. I'm not in a good bargaining position until I perform on what I said I was going to do. But when I do that, I'm going to suggest, hey, this money's coming. Can you allow these 4, 5, 6 people to come in as well? So email me at farrandbalanced @gmail.com, and I'll put it in. I don't recall the part about the warrants on the gold deal. I'm going to have to go back and reread the paperwork. Well, it's there. You don't get them yet. You don't get them yet because, I mean, they did have a small warrant thing, like 4% that you got, but you don't get the warrants yet because you have to convert it's a note, and the note, I can't remember, it's paying 8% or 6% or something, but the note converts into shares and warrants. There's no reason to convert. You're in a much better position as an asset class to own the note than to convert. But at some point, the economics of the decision will be that you either convert, or what I expect to happen is if the company is purchased, the purchasor will have to do the arithmetic on the notes, and that's what they'll have to pay for the notes. They'll have to pay it as if it's converted into stock and warrants, if that makes sense. So it's a really nice piece of paper. Ham said Trump will do something soon. What day? Yeah, Ham has contacts who are very close to Donald Trump and very close to David Nunes. And he absolutely believes that the company will, that Trump will do something about the shorts. Do it massively and do it soon. I don't have the access to those contacts. Books R Us. I mean, Donald Trump doesn't know me from anybody. But if I were to speak to Donald Trump about it, I'd talk quickly because he's not going to want to spend a lot of time. But if I were to suggest how to go forward, I would focus solely on micro cap and small cap shares. Companies like DJT, Donald Trump's own company, are under attack from short sellers. But there's also hedge funds out there like SAC or a Goldman fund or a Merrill Lynch fund or a family office who have enough wherewithal to hire analysts, to hire traders, to fight back, to hire lawyers. But small cap companies, once they go to see Jeff Smith at Lynn Partners, they're buried. There's no uptick rule. There's no investment bankers. There's no research. There's no market makers. The Merrill Lynch rule under $5 is in effect. There's no buyers. There's no enforcement of settlement. Once the trades move to Europe, they lose the trades. There's no consolidated audit trail. There's no requirement that Jeff Smith disclose who his clients are. That when they do a reverse split, the obligation at the broker dealer is reduced by 95%. There's no closing transaction, therefore there's no taxes paid. When a company goes bankrupt, there's no closing transaction, therefore there's no taxes paid. This destroys companies from Eastman Kodak to MMAT to MULN to Roots Recovered now to just hundreds, if not thousands of companies are destroyed. There's no tax benefit to the American taxpayer. There's no ability to keep those patents and the American dream. China can come in to court and buy the battery technology that MMAT developed to keep batteries from exploding. China can buy it. So if I were to go to Trump, I would get him to focus on the fact that the ingenuity of the American financial system is in the garages and laboratories, the schools, the group of angel investors. It's in the minds of Americans throughout the land, and they need a fair price discovery. They need fair trading. They need settlement. They need transparency in the micro cap and small cap. They need Adina Friedman to be fired, and maybe the US government can take over NASDAQ and the small caps and keep 25% of the profits. I don't know. That's how I would talk to Donald Trump. So John lets everyone know that he found a working link on the GTII call. It's on X, Twitter, and it was recorded, and the link still works. So I guess if you go to Twitter and search by GTII or receiver, you should be able to find it, right? I think GTII will trade again as soon as the receiver gets the filings completed. Then, and I think that's 2 quarters. That's 2 quarters. But I think that will take, it might stretch into a 3rd quarter. And I don't know the requirement for the receiver to get the deal done and get the financials done. There may be a little bit of a dance there. So I don't know. It could take a little while. But I would say as soon as they make their filings current, they can get off the expert market. Hey, Lion of all trains. Oh, links. I didn't know that, Lion. Only moderators. Only damn fires. Damn fires can kill a vampire. Only a damp fire can kill a vampire fire. I didn't know that. The GTI 8K says they expect the audit done by the end of March. And then after the audits are finished and submitted, the stock can trade. That's what I understand too, Michelle. Very good answer. Very good answer. John's going to verify, Lion's going to verify it from John and post it. All right, here's the link, everybody. I don't know what happens if I hit that. AI-versity, John Forster, YouTube Live. Thank you, John. Thank you, Lion. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, everybody. They will have to file a new 15C211, which is a very long process, perhaps a year. Do you know I've never heard of a 15C211? I think I've heard of 15Cs, but I always, there's so many things, but yeah. Bless you, you're welcome. Ham has a good contact with Trump. Yeah, I think that's true. I think he does have a good contact. It won't close my stream. I don't know, Lion. I can try, but I have to get a better setup. Right now, this doesn't do it, and I should have a better setup soon. Let me just let me go to X and see if I can find it. I mean, I would love to be proven totally wrong on my assessment. Okay, so 16 minutes to go. R.I. Ocelot says, hard to overstate how crazy this GTII fraud is. In their report, the receiver alleges that an $8,000 Cartier bracelet was purchased with company funds and booked under meeting expenses. It was then shipped to the CEO's daughter for her 51st birthday. That's a post by Ocelot. Fox Hunter says, quotes John Foster, quote, our goal is to not be on the OTC for very long. We want to uplist to the NASDAQ. John Foster, GTII. Well, it takes money. It takes filings. The good thing about GTII, there are enough shareholders to uplist to the NASDAQ. So that's a good thing. I think it would probably take 2 or 3 months to do an uplisting, but it could take longer too. But you guys might have your own opinion. John Foster, FINRA could stop naked short selling if they actually cared to. Let's be honest, FINRA is supposed to be the watchdog, but it feels like they're the lapdog. Yeah, John Foster's right. John Foster, looking forward to it. First of many. Join us live, 3:45. AI Versity. Maybe he'll come on and interview with me. I don't know. Unless he's pissed off with me for all the mistakes that I make. It's still me, Albie says, this incoming GTII management are making it clear to those paying attention their objective moving forward is to not only bring with them a financially successful business, but to protect their shareholders and finish the fight we started. That's excellent. That's excellent. Excellent. Sounds like it's good. Stop Counterfeit Shares says, read the last line. Alpine, NSCC informed Alpine that deficiencies it observed in September 2022 caused Alpine to fall below the backtesting target, and it attributed the deficiencies to Alpine's, quote, net short portfolios, with the top driver being a concentrated short position in GTII. Ramen Soup says, the CEO blocked him. I don't blame him. Big JR says, join at 3:45. Oscillate says, finally going over some of the GTI receivers reports, and wow, there is some really bad stuff here. Allegations of using corporate funds to pay executives' personal credit cards, a Porsche McLaren loan, and even straight up embezzlement was touted as a naked short play. All right, so Aldo put up a sign of going to Pete the Greek's point. He put up a picture of Texas, 5 billion barrels of oil, good for the USA, just fix MMTLP. This John Foster guy looks good. So they found $12 million in stock sales. I can't help but point out that the receiver gets 10% of that. It's a nice job if you can get it. It's hard to read. It's so small print. Tony Denaro wrote, if you are speculating on a short squeeze or a bankruptcy play or even a zero revenue company, all are fine with me. No judgments. But you knew what you were buying and why. Is it proper to label yourself as an investor? It's a good question. The GTII receiver. All right, so you guys should sign up on Twitter for GTII receiver. And he updates, and he has a link. Unusual Whales just posted, for the first time on record, the majority of all trading in U.S. stocks is now consistently occurring outside the country's exchanges in dark pools, according to Bloomberg. Wow. Can somebody ask Junk Savvy about this? Maybe she could have William Farron and Ham come onto her show. Oh, I'm glad to go onto her show. Junk Savvy is terrific. She's absolutely terrific. All right. Now there's some posts for me from a long time ago. That doesn't interest me. I hate seeing me. What's this headline? Oh my gosh. An OnlyFans person who exercised her power, her freedom, her empowerment with 1,000 men in 12 hours is not allowed to post the video on OnlyFans. So she's not going to make any money. A different man every 41 seconds. Well, I guess there's nothing much to say to that. Why has Nix had so many red days in a row? There's more sellers than buyers. And a lot of the selling is counterfeit. I believe Nixie, as you know, Vanden plays, of course, you're on here so negative, I sometimes think you're one of the shorts. But Nixie, I think in November, I mean, you can look it up. Might have been October. But Nixie traded 52 million shares in one day, and it ran to $12 pre-market. It opened at $8, and there was a short, a guy that does research, and he's a famous short. He has a picture of himself with a poodle, and I don't think that's really him. Anyway, there was a lot of shenanigans that went on, and whatever was happening, that stock looked like it was going to run. It stopped. So Nixie was a nice trade, and I think I cautioned everybody that I thought Christmas time, Hanukkah time, Kwanzaa time, day off on a Wednesday in the middle of the week, followed by day off on a Wednesday in the middle of the week for New Year's. I just felt like Nixie got ahead of itself, and it was time to pull away because of that. Nixie is now down. It's gone from whatever that number you want to pick, $8 or $12. It's come all the way down to $2.39. I would imagine a lot of people are selling because they're like, oh God, it's down, I just want out. When it's up, they buy. When it's down, they sell. That's human nature. I also think the shorts are in there selling the stock. My guess is, and it's only a guess, and it's speculative, is that there's going to be another run to the upside for Nix. Now, here's the negatives on Nixie. The negatives are, whatever happened in October happened. So if something happens now, is it really a surprise? I'm a firm believer the only thing that makes stocks run is a surprise. So I don't know the answer to that one. The news that sort of caught everybody off guard may be digested now, and maybe it doesn't have the power, but still that news is Nixie intends to be $1 billion company over many months. To my memory, they may have said 36 months, but I think they can bring that forward very quickly as well. They need to close their deal with Just Got to Have It, which is a $10 million revenue company last year, 40% margin. So the company that Nixie reversed into is recruiter.com. And recruiter.com, it was run by a guy named Granger Whitlaw, who came on and did a picture of himself in shorts. And he got 250,000 shares of Nixie as his parting gift, fully tradable now. And, I think there's enthusiasm, at least on his part, to get the stock to trade up so he can be rich. If I had to call it, I think Nixie is a high-risk play. It's a much better thing to buy now at 240 than it was at 6 or 7. I think there'll be one more chance where there's a huge volume and shorts are trying to cover, because it was recruiter.com, which got crushed by the same criminals, the Jack Smiths of the criminal world. We can't see you. Did I do something wrong? You can't see me? The receiver only gets 10% of what he recovers. Yeah, but they recovered $12 million, it said. I might have misread it, Robert. They recovered. Oh, I see what you're saying. They located 12 million in corrupt sales of stock, but if he doesn't get that money back to the share, I see what you're saying. So the 12 million could be dissipated. That's your point. How do you get it back from a Porsche loan? How do you get it back from a Cartier watch? I see your point. That makes sense. Robert. I love Junk Savvy. Yeah, she's great. I am constantly amazed at her ability to take a lot of complex information and bring it down to the 2 or 3 really important points. And she's fearless too. I enjoy that. She allows the evidence to take her where it goes, and that's where it goes. And I think that's a terrific characteristic of Junk Savvy. She, I think, has a high ethical standard. And I think she really works hard on behalf of everyone. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Junk Savvy. That was a lot of work for nothing. Her name is OnlyFans has banned the video, reasoning that it cannot verify the age of all of the participants. Some might call this the ultimate anticlimax. Oh, gross. I guess the first guy is the lucky guy. All right, so I don't know what else. I called him twice, 3 times. And he tried to call me as well. Let's see if there's any news. I hope we're not at war anywhere. Senator Mitch McConnell falls. Who's Michael Jordan? Is that the baseball player? His son was arrested. AOC calls Elon Musk unintelligent. Japan Airlines plane hits a parked Delta plane in Seattle. Army recruiting levels reach 15-year high. USAID funded Stanford University. Wow. I read that USAID funded the New York Times. I can't understand if Pam Bondi is, her pictures make her look very young. Super AI coming in Trump's first 100 days. All right. Let's see where Pete Alonso is. All right, let's see what's happening. In a late night Truth Social post, the president wrote, 20 years ago, autism in children was 1 in 1,000. Now it's 1 in 34. Something is wrong. We need Bobby. Maybe it's because everybody's waiting until later to have children. All right. The news is not that exciting. I think we had a long call, so I think I'm going to sign off. I wish I could go walk my dog. I appreciate everybody here. I'll try to go live during the day tomorrow if I can, but I wasn't able to do it today. So thank you for being here. Good luck with everyone, and my best to everybody. Cheers.